With the latest out of the Middle East, big news. The office of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has confirmed that negotiating teams have agreed to the ceasefire and hostage release deal. Now, a security cabinet meeting is set for this morning to vote on the deal, with the full cabinet meeting set to vote later, and then time allotted for Israel's Supreme Court to hear any appeals. Still a few hurdles. Netanyahu's office says that despite the delays, the ceasefire is still expected to go into effect Sunday, with 3 hostages released then. Israel delayed the security cabinet vote yesterday, blaming Hamas for creating a last-minute crisis without providing details.
Yeah, and Richard, obviously, when this news first broke, I'm sure you thought the same thing that I thought, which is, okay, maybe this is going to happen. It's probably going to happen because you have 2 American presidents that are now leaning on Israel and Hamas to make this happen. But you knew the obstacle was going to be Bibi Netanyahu not managing negotiations with Hamas, but managing negotiations with the most extreme right-wing members of his own cabinet. And sure enough, that happened.
Absolutely right. But we'll get this first phase. This is going to happen. It gets, though, more difficult every phase you go on. So the second phase, which again involves not just hostages for prisoners, the last remaining live hostages, a lot more Palestinian prisoners, Israel then would have to actually vacate completely the Gaza Strip. And I think that gets more complicated. And the third phase, which talks about all the arrangements for what comes after, we're not even in that zip code yet. So I think this gets progressively more difficult as we go on. But my sense is, Joe, Bibi Netanyahu could not go ahead with this first phase. It would have been like Lucy in the football.
Right.
Expectations are so high, emotionally so desperate in Israel to get this done. This had to go through.
Well, I'll say also, Gaddy, Bibi Netanyahu knows what we've been saying here. He's not the most popular politician in Israel. He's not close to being the most popular politician in Israel. Just like Joe Biden was the most popular politician in Israel after October 7th, that is now Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is going to lean on him very, very hard. That's obviously what happened here. He's been saying for the past month, he wants this resolved, or there's going to be hell to pay. So I'm not exactly sure where Bibi Netanyahu had left to go.
No, I mean, it was interesting to hear Joe Biden very explicitly say that this was a deal that had been negotiated by his team, although he gave credit in these final days of getting it over the line also to the incoming Trump administration, but clearly saying, listen, this was the deal that had been put in place back last spring, and it could have been in place then. But already this is being seen as in the region as the impact of Donald Trump coming into office. Now, whether this means that America going forward is going to be seen as having more power in the region than it's had over the last 2 years, since the 18 months or so, since the invasion of October the 7th, because one of the things that's been really laid stark over the last period since that Hamas invasion is how little power the United States has had, how little power the Biden administration has had to get the deal that it wanted to get done. America was not being in the position of pushing hard to get this done. Will that be different now Donald Trump is coming into office? There are some indications and some suggestions that this already shows that it is. But let's see. Let's see if Bibi Netanyahu's coalition actually survives this. And let's see, as Richard is saying, we get the first phase of this done, but this is a long period, and every stage it gets more and more tenuous and more fragile.
Well, Jonathan, for anybody that's been in the White House, reported on the White House, interviewed Joe Biden on or off the record, there's just no doubt Biden had a horrific relationship with Netanyahu for at least a year. Really was angry that Netanyahu would not move towards a peace agreement. And so their relationship was almost non-existent because it wasn't in Netanyahu's political favor to come to a peace treaty, bring the hostages home, do the things that Joe Biden and the rest of the world wanted to be done. So now you do have a new administration coming in, Trump coming in, And their attitude is they're going to pick up where they left off with the Abraham Accords, and we're fully expecting to have an Israel-Saudi deal soon after. And I suspect part of what happens in Gaza may have to do with money that Saudi Arabia provides for the rebuilding of Gaza.
Yeah, first on the Biden part, he went to Israel in the days after October 7th, literally wrapped Netanyahu in a hug. But since then, the relationship slowly at first and then rapidly deteriorated, where to the point where Biden seethed with anger at how Netanyahu would go back on promises, would move the goalposts in terms of what deal would be made, how he would say one thing privately and another thing very publicly, and in how he would continue to kowtow to the conservative wishes of his cabinet. Biden privately blames Netanyahu for this war, for prolonging a war that he believes hurt his reelection chances earlier last year. This is a different moment now, though. Netanyahu, for the most part, has enjoyed a good relationship with Trump. They did have a brief falling out after Netanyahu recognized Biden's win in 2020. Trump got mad at him for acknowledging that Joe Biden won the election. But they have patched that up, and they are close. And I'm told that part of this, Eugene, is that the Netanyahu government wants to get off on the right foot with the Trump team coming in, that they had good relations last time. They want that as well. Also, the chaotic, sort of bombastic approach that Trump takes to the office, where he said literally they'd be hell to pay in the Middle East if a deal wasn't struck before he took office, could have spooked all parties involved. That said, there's still skepticism that this deal will hold, that Netanyahu will follow through. I was speaking to someone in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee just yesterday who had real concerns that at the end, Netanyahu would find some way to submarine it if he thought it was for his own advantage.
Really, exactly. And I think he would have. My question about Netanyahu is, his governing coalition is the far right, that's not going to like this deal, that doesn't like this deal, that doesn't want any deal, that wants the final end of Hamas and essentially Israeli annexation of Gaza and the West Bank, or Judea and Samaria, and so he has to deal with that as well. I do think that Trump coming into office created a new situation. The other new situation is how weak Hamas is right now. I mean, they have their patrons are Syria, Iran, that whole axis or arc is severely weakened now. In the case of Syria, out of power. Hezbollah is much weaker. Hamas has no backup. And they've been battered, and so it's certainly in their interest to make this deal.
Rev, I'm not sure that Bibi Netanyahu reads Truman Capote, but if he did, he could read a book called Answered Prayers, where Capote says more tears are shed over answered prayers than any other kind. And he so wanted Donald Trump to beat Joe Biden. And so much of what he did, it seemed during the campaign, was to help divide Biden's Democratic Party and make his pathway to the presidency much easier, Donald Trump's. So he got his answered prayer, and now he's going to be a junior partner in running Israel. And if you talk to people in the Trump administration, they basically said there were times during the Abraham Accords where people say, just step aside, we'll take care of this. So he got what he wants, and now he's feeling, the leverage that Trump has over him, and he's going to be a junior partner in his own country. And that's actually what he was aiming for. I don't think he likes this result, but he's now being pushed to the edge.
He's being pushed to the edge, and it's being very dramatically shown he'll be pushed to the edge. I think that the real problem is going to be in phase 2 and 3. I think that you must remember, as this was even announced, there's still people being killed in the Gaza at this point.
Can we just underline that fact? People still being killed. And the humanitarian crisis that the news media was all reporting about 9 months ago, it's only gotten worse.
That's right.
It's heinous there. The world is going to be horrified when when this ceasefire takes place and humanitarian assistance comes in, the world is going to be horrified at the scale of suffering in Gaza.
That's my point. I think that we have not really seen the depths of what happened in Gaza. And as I said, there's killing going on right now, hopefully will end Sunday. And we don't know the conditions of some of the hostages when they're returned. The emotions, the families. It's almost like the bodies of the hostages and the bodies of innocent people in Gaza don't matter, that this is just a political chess game with Netanyahu and Biden and Trump. What about the people that are in the middle of this? And that's what the threat of phase 2 and 3, because those emotions and those reactions are going to really dictate a lot. When the world sees what really happened in Gaza, and when the world really sees these hostages, it's going to turn public opinion, and it's going to be a climate that Trump and Netanyahu is going to have to negotiate.
And Richard, final word on this. We're going to be getting back to this throughout the hour, but you wanted to get in final word.
Yeah, I wanted to come back on your point about answered prayers. Donald Trump clearly had real leverage over Bibi Netanyahu here. In a funny sort of way, because Bibi Netanyahu no longer had the leverage of going around Joe Biden to Donald Trump. It was a little bit like Nixon going to China.
Right.
So Trump has the evangelicals, has conservative American Jews. And I think that will help get this deal. Certainly phase 1, probably phase 2, because you've got to get all the hostages back. But, and that's the big but, and maybe also the deal with the Saudis. I don't think, though, there is any appetite that I've discovered for tackling the fundamentals of the Israeli-Palestinian issue. So no one should look at this. As good as this is, as welcome this is, this ain't peace.
I totally agree with you.
We are not far down that road at all. To you, Bob Euchre, we talked about this morning. This is still the first inning here. We've got a long, long ways to go. This is real. Not just this Israeli government, Joe. Israel has changed, in part because of October 7th, in part because of demographics. I'm not sure Israel is psychologically and politically prepared to go much beyond this. I'm not sure the Trump administration is prepared to push much beyond this. I'm not sure Palestinians are ready yet to coexist peacefully with Israel on a large scale. So this, as good as this is, it's just a time also for keeping it in perspective.